Archangel Michael says, "This is your miracle moment, do not scroll away, because what you do in the next few minutes matters more than you currently realize, more than another ordinary scroll through another ordinary piece of content that will be forgotten within the hour." Something brought you here today, to this specific message, at this specific moment. Call it coincidence if you prefer, call it algorithm, call it whatever framing feels most comfortable to your particular way of understanding the world. But notice how many messages you scroll past in a single day without stopping, and ask yourself why this particular one caused you to pause long enough to actually begin reading these words. That pause itself is worth taking seriously, rather than dismissing simply because its cause cannot be fully explained or proven. Take a breath. Let your body settle into stillness, even if only briefly. Whatever was occupying your attention before this moment, set it aside for the next few minutes, because what follows deserves genuine presence rather than the scattered, half attention that so much of daily life tends to receive amid constant competing demands and distractions. Here is what this message is actually asking of you, stated plainly rather than wrapped in unnecessary mystery. It is asking you to recognize that a moment of genuine significance may be available to you right now, today, in whatever specific area of your life has felt most in need of positive change. Not a guarantee of instant, effortless transformation requiring nothing further from you, but a genuine opportunity, arriving at this particular moment, worth engaging with fully rather than allowing to pass by unnoticed the way countless similar moments have likely passed by before, unclaimed, simply because attention was elsewhere when it mattered most. What specifically has felt most difficult, most stuck, most in need of positive shift in your own life recently? Not a vague, general sense of wanting things to improve somehow, but something specific, something you could name clearly if asked directly. Perhaps a relationship that has felt strained or distant. Perhaps a career situation that has felt stagnant or unfulfilling. Perhaps a health concern that has been weighing on you more than you have openly acknowledged. Perhaps a financial situation that has generated persistent anxiety despite your best efforts to manage it. Perhaps simply a general sense of disconnection from meaning or purpose that has been difficult to fully articulate but nonetheless persistently present beneath the surface of your daily activities. Whatever specifically arose as you considered this question, hold it clearly in mind as you continue through the rest of this message, because everything that follows is most directly relevant to exactly this specific area, the one your own honest reflection just identified as most significant right now. Notice, too, how quickly your mind may have tried to move past this reflection, offering a quick, surface-level answer before genuinely sitting with the question long enough to reach something deeper and more specific. This tendency toward quick, surface-level answers is common, a habit developed through years of moving quickly through daily demands without much space for slower, more deliberate reflection. If your initial answer felt somewhat vague or general, try returning to the question once more, allowing a little more time this time, seeing whether something more specific and precise emerges when given genuine space to surface fully. Here is something important to understand about miracles, or significant positive shifts, whatever term feels most comfortable to you personally. They rarely arrive as a single, isolated event completely disconnected from everything that came before it. More often, a miracle represents a convergence, a moment where preparation already quietly underway, whether consciously recognized or not, meets an opportunity that suddenly becomes visible and available. This means the miracle you may be sensing as available right now is likely connected to work you have already been doing, consciously or unconsciously, over recent weeks or months, even if that connection has not yet become fully clear to you. What preparation might already have been quietly underway in your own life, related to whatever specific area you identified as most significant. Perhaps you have been slowly building a particular skill, without fully recognizing how that skill might soon become relevant. Perhaps you have been gradually healing from a particular wound, developing capacity you did not previously possess for handling whatever specific situation might now be shifting. Perhaps you have simply been developing greater clarity about what you actually want, sharpened specifically through the experience of continuing to not yet fully have it, clarity that may now allow you to recognize and engage with an opportunity you would have missed entirely without that hard-won clarity already in place. Recognizing this preparation, honestly and specifically rather than vaguely, can itself help you engage more fully with whatever miracle moment is currently available. When you understand how your own past efforts and growth have connected to what is now becoming possible, you approach the present opportunity with greater confidence and readiness than you would if the opportunity felt entirely disconnected from anything you had previously done or experienced. Take a moment to name, specifically, at least one way you have already been preparing, consciously or unconsciously, for whatever this particular opportunity turns out to involve. This does not need to be a dramatic example. It might simply be a small habit developed over recent months, a difficult conversation already survived that built resilience you did not previously possess, or a piece of honest self-reflection that shifted how you understand your own priorities. Naming this preparation specifically helps transform this moment from something that feels random or disconnected from your history into something that feels like a genuine continuation of work already quietly underway. Here is why this particular moment specifically calls for immediate engagement rather than extended deliberation about whether or how to respond. Miracle moments, significant opportunities for positive change, tend to have a specific quality of aliveness or immediacy to them, a sense that engagement matters now rather than at some indefinite future point when circumstances feel more convenient. This does not mean every decision within this opportunity needs to be made instantly, without any careful thought whatsoever. It means the initial engagement, the choice to actually pay attention and begin moving toward whatever this opportunity represents, benefits significantly from happening now, while the sense of aliveness and immediacy remains present, rather than being postponed until that sense has faded back into ordinary daily distraction and habitual avoidance. A specific parallel from ordinary experience illustrates this same principle well. A particular insight or piece of clarity that arrives during a conversation or a quiet moment of reflection often feels vivid and compelling in that specific moment, only to fade significantly in vividness once the day's ordinary demands and distractions resume their usual pace. This is not because the original insight was somehow false or unimportant. It simply reflects how attention naturally works, with vivid moments of clarity requiring some form of capture or action while they remain fresh, rather than being trusted to remain equally accessible once time has passed and other concerns have claimed the mental space that clarity briefly occupied. So, what specifically would represent genuine initial engagement with whatever miracle moment you have identified as most relevant to your own current situation? This does not need to be a dramatic, complete transformation happening within these next few minutes. It simply needs to be a genuine first step, small enough to actually be manageable right now, but real enough to represent actual movement rather than simply more contemplation without any accompanying action. If your identified area involves a relationship, this first step might be as simple as deciding to reach out today, even briefly, rather than continuing to postpone that contact indefinitely. If your identified area involves career or purpose, this first step might be as simple as researching one specific opportunity, or writing down one specific idea that has been circling in your mind without yet being committed to paper or otherwise externalized in some concrete form. If your identified area involves health, this first step might be as simple as scheduling one appointment you have been postponing, or beginning one small habit today rather than continuing to wait for a more convenient future starting point. If your identified area involves finances, this first step might be as simple as finally looking honestly at your actual numbers, or taking one concrete action toward whatever specific financial goal has felt most urgent recently. Whatever this specific first step turns out to be for you, notice that it does not need to be large or dramatic in order to matter significantly. Miracle moments often unfold through exactly this kind of small, immediate action, rather than through waiting for some larger, more dramatic gesture that continues being postponed precisely because its scale makes it feel too intimidating to actually begin. Picture yourself actually taking this small step, as specifically and vividly as you genuinely can. Not the eventual larger outcome, simply the step itself, whatever it happens to be. Notice any resistance that arises as you picture this, and notice, too, that this resistance, however present it might feel, does not actually prevent you from taking the step. Resistance and action can coexist. You do not need to wait for the resistance to disappear entirely before moving forward with whatever small action feels genuinely available to you right now. Doubt likely arose at some point as you have been reading through this message, questioning whether any of this genuinely applies to your own specific situation, or whether it is simply generic encouragement offered broadly without any real connection to your particular life and circumstances. This doubt is worth acknowledging honestly rather than dismissing entirely, but it is also worth examining rather than automatically accepting as the final, authoritative word on the matter. Doubt often serves a genuine protective function, helping prevent naive credulity that might otherwise lead to poor decisions based on insufficient consideration. But doubt can also become excessive, functioning less as genuine protective discernment and more as a habitual pattern that reflexively resists anything unfamiliar or emotionally significant, regardless of whether that resistance actually serves your genuine well-being and growth in any particular instance. What underlies this doubt, if it has arisen for you? Is it based on genuine, careful examination of whether the message actually connects to your own situation, or is it more reflexive, a general pattern of skepticism toward anything that sounds hopeful or positive, regardless of its specific content or relevance? Both forms of doubt deserve consideration, but they call for somewhat different responses. Genuine, careful examination deserves genuine, careful response, weighing the actual content honestly against your own specific circumstances. Reflexive skepticism, arising more from general habit than from specific examination, might benefit from being held more loosely, allowing genuine consideration of the message's content despite that habitual skeptical response continuing to operate in the background. Recall a time in your own past when doubt initially arose regarding something that ultimately proved genuinely valuable and significant, a situation where your initial skepticism, had it been allowed to prevent engagement entirely, would have caused you to miss something that later proved meaningful and worthwhile. This is not a suggestion that all doubt should simply be ignored or dismissed. It is simply an invitation to hold your current doubt with enough flexibility that genuine engagement with this message's content remains possible, rather than allowing doubt to shut down that engagement entirely before it has even had a fair opportunity to unfold. Here is something else worth understanding about miracle moments specifically, since this understanding shapes how you should actually approach engaging with whatever opportunity feels most relevant to your own current situation. A miracle moment rarely resolves an entire significant life challenge completely and instantly through a single action. More often, it represents an opening, a specific point of leverage that, once engaged with genuinely, begins a process of positive change that continues unfolding over subsequent days, weeks, or months, rather than completing itself entirely within the initial moment of engagement alone. Your task right now, then, is not to solve everything completely, immediately, within these next few minutes. It is simply to engage genuinely with the specific opening currently available, trusting that this genuine engagement will open subsequent possibilities that are not yet fully visible from where you currently stand, but that will become visible progressively as you continue moving forward from this initial point of engagement. Trusting this process means engaging fully with the specific opening currently available without needing to see the complete path forward before you are willing to take this first genuine step. This kind of trust does not require blind faith disconnected from reasonable judgment. It simply requires enough willingness to begin, based on the genuine resonance you have felt while reading through this message, even without complete certainty about exactly how everything will eventually unfold from this particular starting point. Genuine miracle moments often carry a specific emotional quality, a sense of aliveness, of significance, of something mattering more than ordinary daily occurrences typically do. If, as you have been reading through this message, you have noticed this kind of heightened emotional response, whether excitement, hope, a sense of recognition, or even a kind of nervous energy that feels different from ordinary anxiety, this emotional response itself is worth taking seriously as additional information, complementing rather than replacing careful, honest thought about whether this message's content genuinely applies to your own specific situation. One useful way to distinguish this kind of meaningful emotional signal from simply general emotional reactivity involves specificity. Genuine emotional recognition tends to connect clearly to specific details, specific circumstances in your own life, rather than remaining a vague, generalized emotional response that could apply equally well to almost any hopeful-sounding message regardless of its particular content. If your emotional response feels connected to specific, identifiable aspects of your own situation, this specificity itself lends additional credibility to that emotional response as genuine information rather than simply generic reactivity. Notice, honestly, what emotional response has actually arisen for you as you have continued reading through this message. If a genuine emotional response has been present, allow yourself to take it seriously rather than immediately dismissing it as simply manufactured or manipulated by the message's specific language and framing. Emotion, when it arises genuinely rather than being artificially manufactured through manipulative tactics, often carries valuable information that purely intellectual analysis alone sometimes misses or underweights. Try naming this emotional response with a single specific word if you can, rather than leaving it as a vague, unnamed feeling. Hope, relief, curiosity, nervousness, excitement. Whatever word feels most accurate, naming it specifically tends to make the emotion easier to work with consciously, rather than leaving it as diffuse background noise that influences you without ever being fully acknowledged or understood. Here is a further consideration worth holding as you continue engaging with this message and whatever specific opportunity it has helped you identify. Genuine miracle moments, while significant, rarely require you to abandon reasonable caution or careful judgment entirely. This message is not asking you to make major, irreversible decisions impulsively, without any genuine thought or consideration. It is simply asking you to engage genuinely, to take real, meaningful action rather than continuing indefinite postponement, while still exercising whatever reasonable care and judgment any significant decision or action genuinely deserves. There is an important distinction between reasonable, appropriate caution and excessive, paralyzing overthinking, since these two responses can sometimes feel similar in the moment despite being quite different in their actual effects. Reasonable caution involves gathering genuinely relevant information, considering realistic potential outcomes, and proceeding once sufficient clarity has developed, typically within a reasonable, bounded time frame. Excessive overthinking involves endless deliberation that never actually reaches a point of sufficient clarity, using the appearance of careful consideration as a sophisticated justification for continued avoidance and postponement, sometimes extending indefinitely without any genuine resolution ever actually being reached. If you notice yourself tending toward this second pattern, excessive overthinking that never quite reaches genuine resolution, try setting a specific, reasonable deadline for whatever decision or action feels relevant to your current situation, ensuring that careful consideration does not simply become another sophisticated form of the same avoidance this entire message has been encouraging you to move beyond. Balancing genuine, timely engagement with continued reasonable care and judgment does not require these two priorities to conflict with each other. Timely engagement might mean beginning research on a specific opportunity today, rather than postponing that research indefinitely, while still taking whatever additional time is genuinely needed to make a fully informed, careful decision once that initial research has actually been completed. Timely engagement might mean reaching out to begin a conversation today, while still allowing that conversation and any decisions arising from it to unfold at whatever pace genuinely serves the situation, rather than forcing premature resolution simply for the sake of immediate closure. No single moment, however significant, entirely determines an entire life trajectory on its own. But certain moments do carry disproportionate significance, functioning as genuine turning points around which subsequent developments organize themselves in ways that would not have occurred, or would have occurred quite differently, had that particular moment been allowed to pass by unengaged. Recall a specific past moment in your own life that, in retrospect, functioned as exactly this kind of disproportionately significant turning point, even if it did not necessarily feel dramatically significant while it was actually happening. Perhaps a specific conversation that shifted the direction of a relationship. Perhaps a specific decision that opened a path you would not otherwise have pursued. Perhaps a specific piece of information or insight that changed how you understood a situation you had been struggling with for some time. This kind of past example shows that significant turning points do not always announce themselves as obviously significant in the moment they are actually occurring, which is precisely why this message is encouraging you to take the present moment seriously rather than waiting for some more obviously dramatic signal before engaging genuinely with what is currently available to you. Does this particular moment, right now, as you continue reading through this message, feel like it might carry this kind of disproportionate significance for you personally, based on everything you have reflected on throughout this reading? This is not a question you need to answer with absolute certainty. It is simply worth genuinely sitting with, allowing whatever honest response arises to inform how seriously you take the specific action steps this message has been encouraging throughout. Here is a final significant consideration before this message moves toward its close. Miracle moments, once recognized and engaged with genuinely, typically require sustained follow-through beyond the initial moment of recognition and engagement in order to actually produce the significant positive change they initially made possible. This means whatever first step you take today, in response to this message, likely needs to be followed by additional steps in the coming days and weeks, continued engagement rather than a single isolated action that then gets abandoned once the immediate impact of this particular message has faded from memory. A common pattern often causes initial momentum to fade prematurely, before genuine, sustained progress has had sufficient opportunity to develop and stabilize. This happens because initial motivation, however intense, gradually dissipates once the ordinary demands and distractions of daily life reassert themselves, without any deliberate structure or practice in place to sustain engagement beyond that initial burst of motivation and enthusiasm. Understanding this common pattern in advance can help you proactively build the kind of structure and practice needed to sustain engagement well beyond this initial moment, rather than relying purely on motivation alone, which reliably tends to fluctuate and diminish over time regardless of how genuinely significant the underlying opportunity actually is. What specific follow-through might look like for you, beyond simply the initial first step already discussed earlier in this message? Checking in with yourself regularly, perhaps weekly, about continued progress in whatever specific area you have identified as most significant, can help sustain momentum over time. Identifying someone who could serve as a source of accountability helps ensure that initial momentum does not simply fade away once the immediate emotional impact of this particular reading experience has passed. Setting specific, concrete markers of progress you can track over the coming weeks provides tangible evidence of continued movement rather than relying purely on memory or general intention to sustain your engagement over time. Inevitable moments of doubt or difficulty are likely to arise during this continued process, moments when the initial sense of significance and possibility feels harder to access than it does right now, in this particular moment of first engaging with this message. These moments of doubt do not indicate that the original miracle moment was somehow illusory or mistaken. They simply reflect the natural fluctuation that accompanies any extended process of positive change, particularly during its early stages before concrete, visible results have had sufficient time to develop and become clearly apparent. A specific strategy worth preparing now, for use during these moments of doubt, might involve returning to this specific message, rereading whatever sections felt most resonant during this initial reading. It might mean reviewing whatever record you have kept of progress already made, providing concrete evidence that genuine movement has already occurred even if the larger goal remains not yet fully realized. It might mean reaching out to whatever support person you have identified, sharing the specific doubt currently being experienced and receiving whatever encouragement or perspective they might be able to offer in that particular moment. When these moments of doubt arise, as they likely will at some point during the coming days or weeks, return to this message, or at least to the specific reflections and insights it has helped you access today, rather than allowing that doubt to convince you that the entire process should simply be abandoned. Genuine positive change rarely unfolds in a perfectly smooth, uninterrupted line. It typically involves periods of momentum alongside periods of doubt or apparent stagnation, both being normal parts of a genuine, sustained process rather than evidence that the process itself has somehow failed or gone wrong. What specific support might help you sustain this process beyond today, whether through a specific person who can offer encouragement and accountability, a specific practice you can return to regularly for renewed clarity and motivation, or simply a specific reminder you can create for yourself, something brief and easily accessible, that helps reconnect you with the significance you have felt during this particular reading experience whenever that significance begins to fade amid the ordinary demands and distractions of daily life. Gratitude, genuinely practiced, tends to reinforce and sustain positive change more effectively than pure willpower or discipline alone typically manage on their own. As you continue engaging with whatever miracle moment this message has helped you identify, deliberately notice and appreciate each small piece of progress along the way, rather than only focusing on the larger, still distant final outcome you are working toward. This kind of consistent, genuine appreciation for incremental progress tends to sustain motivation more effectively across an extended process than focusing exclusively on a distant final goal that can feel discouragingly far away during the earlier stages of the process. Celebrating small wins along the way, even briefly, even privately if that feels more comfortable than sharing them publicly, can help reinforce the sense that genuine positive change is actually underway, rather than remaining purely theoretical or hoped for without any tangible evidence of actual progress. This celebration does not need to be elaborate. It might simply mean pausing briefly to acknowledge internally, "That step mattered, I actually did that," rather than immediately rushing forward to the next task without ever genuinely registering the significance of what has already been accomplished. What specific obstacles are most likely to arise as you continue this process beyond today? Obstacles worth anticipating now rather than being caught off guard by them later. If your identified area involves a relationship, a likely obstacle might be the other person responding differently than hoped, requiring patience and continued effort rather than immediate resolution. If your identified area involves career or purpose, a likely obstacle might be practical constraints, time, resources, competing responsibilities, that make consistent progress more difficult than initial enthusiasm might suggest. If your identified area involves health, a likely obstacle might be the natural human tendency to lose motivation once initial enthusiasm fades, particularly before results have become clearly visible and reinforcing on their own. If your identified area involves finances, a likely obstacle might be unexpected expenses or setbacks that test your continued commitment to whatever specific financial goal you have identified as significant. Whatever obstacle feels most likely for your own specific situation, briefly consider how you might respond to it if and when it actually arises, rather than being caught entirely unprepared. This kind of advanced consideration does not guarantee smooth, effortless progress free from any genuine difficulty. But it does tend to make actual obstacles, when they arise, feel less like unexpected proof that the entire process has failed, and more like anticipated, manageable challenges within a larger process that remains fundamentally on track despite this particular difficulty. Community or connection often plays a significant role in sustaining this process beyond today. Significant positive change often proves more sustainable when it is not attempted in complete isolation, disconnected from any broader support or connection with other people who understand and support what you are working toward. If your identified area of focus connects naturally to any existing community, whether formal or informal, engaging more actively with that community might provide valuable support as you continue this process. If no such community currently exists in an obvious form, finding or building one, even in a small, informal way, might genuinely benefit your continued progress over the coming weeks and months. Professional support may also play a relevant role, depending on your particular identified area of focus. Not every situation requires professional involvement, but many genuinely benefit from it, whether through therapy or counseling for emotional or relational matters, financial advising for money-related concerns, medical or health professionals for physical well-being matters, or career coaching or mentorship for professional development concerns. If professional support feels relevant to your own specific situation, treat this as a legitimate part of genuine engagement with your miracle moment, rather than viewing it as somehow separate from or less significant than purely personal effort and determination alone. What specific timeline feels realistic for your own identified area of focus, recognizing that different kinds of positive change genuinely require different amounts of time to fully unfold. Some changes might show meaningful progress within days or weeks. Others, particularly those involving significant relationship repair, career transition, or substantial health improvement, often require months or even longer to fully develop and stabilize. Holding realistic expectations about timeline, rather than expecting everything to resolve completely within an unreasonably short period, tends to support sustained engagement more effectively than expectations that inevitably lead to discouragement when change does not occur as quickly as initially hoped. This timeline consideration does not mean patience should become an excuse for inaction or continued postponement. It simply means holding both genuine urgency about beginning now, and genuine patience about the full unfolding process taking whatever time it authentically requires, rather than either rushing prematurely toward complete resolution or using extended timeline as justification for indefinite delay before even beginning the process at all. Before this message reaches its true close, take one final moment for yourself, extending slightly beyond a quick, passive reading in order to genuinely consolidate what has emerged throughout this reflection. Name, specifically, the area of your life you identified earlier as most significant right now. Name, specifically, the first step you have identified as a genuine, immediate response to this particular miracle moment. Briefly consider what follow-through over the coming days and weeks might look like, ensuring this moment of recognition actually translates into sustained positive change rather than fading quickly back into ordinary, unexamined daily life. This does not need to feel dramatic or overwhelming in order to matter significantly. It simply needs to feel genuine, a real beginning rather than another moment of temporary inspiration quickly forgotten once this message ends and your attention naturally shifts toward whatever comes next in your ordinary day. Trust that this moment, whatever specifically led you here today, carries genuine significance worth taking seriously, rather than dismissing as simply another piece of content encountered and then quickly forgotten among countless others. Something in you recognized enough significance to continue reading this far, past the point where you might have scrolled away had this message genuinely carried no relevance or significance for your own specific life and circumstances. This message reached you today for a reason. Trust that. Carry it with you. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone told you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today, for choosing not to scroll away when scrolling away would have been the easier, more familiar response. Be gentle with yourself as you continue engaging with this miracle moment, one honest, deliberate action at a time.